Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, we break down what might be the craziest attack yet on the film Sound of Freedom. And that's saying something. We chat with Quarter-Black Garrett, the former Louder with Crowder star who is co-headlining Blaze TV's new series. It's called Normal World. And we share a pop culture confession that is as embarrassing as it gets. Trust me, it's rough. Before we start, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast so you don't miss a single show. I'll be having lots of bonus episodes, and it might be going bi-weekly very soon. Or just tell a friend who loves movies and hates the woke mind virus. I think they'll like it as well. Well, I really want to stop talking about Sound of Freedom. I do. But, listen, it's a very good film, not a great film. I've written about it. I've spoken about it across the media landscape. I think I've been talking so much on different radio platforms, different podcasts in the last, week, 2 weeks. And, it is important to show how the media has trained their guns on this particular movie. It is embarrassing. It is important to expose, for sure. But one particular hit piece really stuck out, like a sore thumb. Now, I don't know if you know the name Noah Berlatsky. I didn't know him. He's a freelance journalist, but he's also a former spokesperson for a group called Prostasia. Now, this group claims to be against child sexual abuse, but it also dubs pedophiles MAPS. That's the term for minor attracted person, which is the politically correct way to call pedophiles, because you don't want to insult pedophiles. You don't want to stigmatize them. Well, that's this group's whole theory. You don't want to stigmatize pedophiles. I got a problem with that. The group's other positions also raise some questions, as does Berlatsky's bizarre hit piece. Here's one nugget from his story. The movie Sound of Freedom can create coalitions of feeling, disgust, and righteous rage that connect conservative conspiracy theorists with the mainstream. Wow. The Post-Millennial reported that the piece in question claims the movie is a QAnon dog whistle. How often are we going to hear that when it comes to Sound of Freedom? And it doesn't really help the victims. And by the way, those victims that are shown in the film are, quote, as innocent and sympathetic as possible, unquote. Oh man, Sound of Freedom has gone too far. How dare they show child sex survivors being innocent and sympathetic? Disgusting. Later, the author argues that 67% of the kids who are sexually trafficked are actually 15 to 17 years old and not young children. Oh, phew, no problem here. It's just preteens and teens who are getting sexually trafficked. Move along, nothing to see here. Wow, imagine stating that case as an attack on Sound of Freedom. There's grasping at straws, and then there's that statement. Now, Bloomberg, no small platform, hired this guy to write yet another hit piece on the movie. Did we need another hit piece? Were we lacking that? I don't think that's actually the case. You can't make this stuff up. Now, as I record this episode, it looks like Sound of Freedom is going to crash the $100 million mark at the U.S. box office. That is a massive number, especially, for an indie film. A lot of other blockbusters make it for sure. Smaller films outside the mainstream, they don't get close. In recent years, we've had some pretty good hits outside the mainstream as well. Indie films like Parasite and Everything Everywhere All at Once. They both won Best Picture awards, and they both got nowhere near the $100 million mark. Sound of Freedom is any day now. And I'm betting that all the different factors involved in the film's amazing success, I think the attacks from the press on it are up there or at or near the top. My next guest had a perfectly good job that supported his young family. But Quarter-Black Garrett wanted more. He wanted a more creative way to make ends meet. So he did something about it, which is very cool. He reached out to an existing show, offered up his services as an editor, and then, a little while later, he ended up as a key cog in the Louder with Crowder universe. Not bad, right? Well, now Garrett is the co-host of Normal World, the new Blaze TV show. It's part podcast, part sketch series. It's a work in progress, but so far so very good. Here's a snippet from the show's Independence Day parody that mocks the far left and then the far right.
We're going to be watching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind.
Mankind, not womankind?
Mankind, womankind, whatever. Those words, they should all have new meaning for us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences any longer.
What if I want to be?
Yeah, I love being mad at everything all the time.
Yeah.
Hashtag me too.
You could be mad at the aliens.
Don't fall for the globalist false flag.
Garrett shares his crazy origin story with the Hollywood in Total podcast, along with why normal world is anything but normal, but it sure is funny. Meet family man, entrepreneur, and sketch comedy guru, Quarter-Black Garrett. Quarter-Black Garrett, thank you for joining the show. Now, I was reading a little bit about you and your background, and it sounded a bit like Adam Carolla. He was listening to a radio show one day, and he decided to reach out to the performer in question. It was Jimmy Kimmel. I think Adam had a boxing background. He wanted to lend his skills to Jimmy because they were going to do a fight. And you also heard someone, Steven Crowder, and decided, hey, you heard his call for a YouTube editor or an editor in general, and you raised your hand. Tell me more about that initial experience, because I think it's a great story. I think it's inspiring, too.
Oh, well, thank you. So I was working in corporate America at a movie theater company. I'd worked there for about 10 years, and I had 2 kids at the time, about to have a third, and, just kind of stuck in that kind of almost like dead end, but not really fulfilling my creative needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always wanted to be an editor or be an entertainer of some sort or make things. So I was always doing that as a hobby, and I was watching this show thanks to my dad, because my dad had a subscription to CRTV. That was the company at the time.
Sure.
Because he was a fan of Mark Levin, and I was using his password to listen to Louder with Crowder because I was a fan of the show. And at the end of one of the shows, behind the paywall, him and Not Gay Jared at the time said, "Hey, we're growing and we want some more help, and we want somebody that could video edit, that could help on the set, that could do some camera shooting." And I was like, I could pretend to know what I'm doing, so I shot my. It was like in the middle of the night. I was the only one awake. I got my resume together, which was like nothing, and just sent it over thinking nothing of it, because I'd done the same thing a few times. I actually applied to The Blaze before, and never got a call back, which is funny.
Things come full circle.
Got a call back eventually. Just took a time. And nothing ever came of it. And I told my wife that I did it, and nothing ever came. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell anybody I did it this time. And then I sent it out, and then I get a call back from Scott, their producer or their showrunner at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Hey, I noticed that you live fairly close, about 30, 40 minutes away. So you want to come in for a week just to test, just to see if you could fit?" And I was like, "Oh, yes." But, I played it cool. I was like, "Yes, I could do that." So I showed up there for about a week, shot some sketches, helped them with Photoshops. And this was when there was just 2 people working there, pretty much.
Small team.
It was a very, very small team. They were working out of an old massage store, like in a strip mall. That was our old studio.
Nice.
And I worked there, and then they were like, "Hey, it was great having you here. We loved your energy, and we'll see."
Yeah.
And I didn't get a call back for like 4 months.
Oh gosh. But eventually,
I was like, "Oh, I guess didn't get it. Didn't get it."
Then eventually things worked out. No, this is maybe this is the entrepreneur in me, or just a self-help question. But I think a lot of people would have that impulse, and maybe even have the skill like you did, but say, they won't want me. How do you get beyond that as someone who's trying to break out of what you said, the corporate shell? How do you get to the next level? Because It sounds easy, but it's not. And the fact that you did it multiple times speaks to something inside you, an engine, a drive. But not everyone has that. What made the difference?
I think it's just it's one. I have kids. You know, I have a
Mhm.
family that I love, and I wanted to be able to fulfill my creative desires and support them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I feel like I took risks because I jumped from a job that was I had benefits, it was a good paying job, and it seemed to be very stable. Turned out not to be because the 2020 came and wiped out basically that entire department. I assume because it was very niche, um, being at a movie theater. So at the time, it felt like, oh, this could be a risk. But I think what drove me was that desire to get out of that
Yeah.
corporate area because that is just not me. I'm not a corporate guy. I'm not a numbers. I can't do sales. I'm not good at any of that. So if I
Mhm.
am forced to do that stuff, which I was 100% ready to do that for the rest of my life because
Hmm.
it supported the family. But that opportunity came up and it was something that I wanted to do. So
Excellent.
I just kind of did it.
Yeah. It's funny. I think
It's
that I
hard to
became
quantify.
a better worker when I became a dad, in part because all of a sudden your time is so restricted. You only have X amount of windows each day. And if you don't grab it, you're done. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting how I didn't anticipate that. I look at you as a newer generation of talent that's out there. You're weaned on YouTube, social media, you get pop culture. Do you find more people are getting it like you are, that they're understanding it's just not Comic-Con, it's not just a Harry Potter spin-off. It really does have a larger influence on culture at large.
Yeah, I think that people are coming around to it. It's taken a while, and it's taken the destruction of a lot of those areas
Mhm.
and a lot of uh, that kind of core storytelling and franchises for people to go, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is, maybe Indiana Jones is actually important to our culture.
Mhm.
It's not just a throwaway kids adventure film, which
Yeah.
you could think it is. It's a throwaway adventure film for kids, and it's non, it doesn't offend anybody. It's fun, but there's something in that storytelling that is important, that you do get a little bit of a moral core of our culture through all these different, not just Indiana Jones, but as an example, you get that through a lot of these storytelling.
Yeah.
I think
Interesting.
people are coming to that realization.
Sure. Now, in a way, you're self-taught. You didn't go to school with a very specific, I'm going to be a YouTube/podcast star
Right.
making
Yeah.
sketches. That there's no course like that, at least that I'm aware of. What was the hardest part of that process? Is it teaching yourself the skills and scrambling to find, maybe podcasts that educate you on the craft, or going to other YouTubers and learning from them? How do you get there? Because it's one thing to say, I want to be a creator. I've got a spirit within me, but
Yeah.
how do you get the tools necessary to get it out there?
For me, it was pretty easy because I love to learn about that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, and I wouldn't say easy like I learned it easy, but it was easy to find the energy to do that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like YouTube, that is my go-to place for learning how to set up a stream, how to set up a camera, which camera to buy, what editing software should I get, different tools in that editing software that could help me.
Mm.
Um, and all of that can be learned through the internet for free. You
Yeah.
don't have to go to a school for that.
It's amazing. And it's all free, by the
Yeah,
way.
it's amazing.
Last time I checked, college is a little expensive, so maybe
A little bit.
there's a
Yeah.
lesson
I
here.
went to community college. I
Mhm.
will say that for game design. So I went in for game design and animation, and I dropped out because I got a job. I got that Crowder job, so I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I guess I don't need this anymore. But I learned some things. Like the very first courses were just how to use Photoshop, how to use editing software, and it was literally just the basics. and you could get that on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there wants to learn that, you can learn that.
Actually, I think the syllabus said go to youtube.com/ and then you just go from there.
Absolutely. It did. It was like, here, we're going to watch this video and I'm going to tell you I'm going to instruct you how to do it. I was like, wait, why are we doing this in class? I could just do this at home.
That's funny. I went to community college for art, and then I went to different schools. And I remember one professor who I loved one time in community college said, if you went home and drew every day, and I was trying to be an artist, you don't even need me. So I think I should have taken that lesson and maybe dropped out sooner. But obviously, we want to talk about normal world. And to me, it's a hybrid. It's a podcast. It's a video sketch series. And I assume it's going to grow beyond that. But how would you describe the comedy clips? Because they don't fall under a neat description. They're eclectic. They're a little dark sometimes. They're very funny, obviously. But what's the sensibility there? I'm kind of curious what you're, when you're pitching into Blaze TV or when you're even envisioning it, how do you capture it?
It's kind of like, have you ever watched the show Black Mirror?
Yeah.
It's almost like that. It's like a sketch show if it was Black Mirror. It's a near future, kind of dark, poking at our reality and reminding you of these aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even a political, I think a lot of our audience may think that it's just a right-wing political kind of point of view, but I think we're coming at it at a not center, but at kind of a step back. Let's take a step back and let's kind of make fun of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's kind of poke fun at all of the aspects that are silly in our society, which goes both ways.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, like, we had a sketch where we made fun of boomer, the boomer conservatives, like, you're fake news and those kind of like typical things, but we did it in a fun way. And so yeah, I think it's that little dark, a little poking fun at anybody and everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think the lack of meanness, I think Saturday Night Live, and for many reasons why it's crumbled in recent years, it just seems cruel. Even the funny stuff can have a meanness to it, which comedy can be mean sometimes, but it just seems it's an overwhelming factor. I've gotten the chance to speak to your partner in crime, Dave Mando, a few times. A very funny guy, and he's not a conservative. And he may mock the woke stuff a lot, but he's not a traditional right winger. You mentioned the show is not political in a direct sense. Are you seeing a breakdown there where political labels, which seem so important, maybe aren't as much, and where people are kind of bouncing between parties in a way?
Yeah, for me, I grew up fairly conservative, not like with the label conservative, but with those values. Grew up Christian, but didn't go to church every Sunday. Grew up talking to my mother and my father about different political things that were happening in the world and having conversations about that. And then I, joined that kind of conservative talking sphere. And over the years, I got kind of disillusioned with the whole talking head political stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've gravitated more towards just being kind of like in the center, still holding those beliefs and still being very, very steadfast on the things that I do believe in.
Yeah.
Like abortion and anti-abortion and freedom of speech and the Second Amendment and things like that, but not being so, I don't know, I hate to say it because I think people are going to get mad, but so close-minded to everything else.
Is it doctrinaire, maybe another word, or sort of groupthink?
Yeah, because I see a lot of that, and it's sad to me that you can't have this conversation because we always talk, and at least from my point of view, I always wanted to be the accepting one, because when I see it happening on the left, when they're so unaccepting of anybody, I want to not be that.
Yeah.
So then when I see people be that on our side, I'm like, well, wait a second. I thought we were trying to be the tolerant people. I thought that was our angle.
Yeah.
And I see it not
in the conservatives' defense, I see more and more examples of, like, a Glenn Beck will have a Rob Schneider, people like that who aren't traditional conservatives, and even like Russell Brand seems to make the rounds on the right and is accepted. And 10 years ago he was glorifying socialism. So, but I understand you don't want to get so locked in that you don't accept things. And a recent guest on this show was Jimmy Dore, who's a very funny comedian, very liberal, but boy, he calls them like he sees them, and he will cross party lines early and often. And it's one of the reasons why I want to chat with him, because I think he was so interesting. I know Normal World is new. It's just getting his feet wet. It's great already. It's got some of the sketches are just brilliant. Even the production values are top notch. But what do you see looking forward about the show? How it could evolve, the topics it may tackle? What I imagine you have a grander vision as well. I mean, you can only do so much when you first start, but it seems like the sky's the limit. What's in your mind right now?
Right now, we're really developing what the show is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's formats, right? You try to figure out what that format is, and every show is almost a different format. We're kind of moving it and finding what works with our team and what Dave and I are jiving with and what we like. So yeah, I think it's naturally trying to find that rhythm and that niche. I think overthinking it might be a bad plan.
Sure.
Because you try to you fit yourself into a box and then you don't get out of that box. I think more sketches is where I would want to go. More time to spend on doing that kind of satirical points, making points with sketch, because I'm not a big brain guy. I work better in those kind of scenarios. I have a lot of fun on the talk show. I like to talk to Dave and to guests and to Angela, and that's a ton of fun. But I think where we make the most impact is those really well put together sketches. Yeah, so I think that's where I'd like to go in the future. It's
a target-rich environment too, which I'm sure as a comedic voice is perfect for you. This show covers big tech censorship a lot. I think it's one of the biggest issues of our time, and that's not an exaggeration. Have you encountered that directly, indirectly, and what do you do to, I guess, just bob and weave around it, because it's there?
Oh, absolutely. I've hit it in small ways, where you get banned here or there, and then you just get my account back. I have not been smashed down so badly, like Steven gets it all the time because he's going up against the edge.
Yeah.
The edge of those rules, so he's getting smacked down all the time. So I've seen that a lot. But personally, I'm so even keel about a lot of things. I don't go too hard, just out of my nature.
Sure.
I'm very a chill person.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think it is important though, if you are one of the people that do go up against that line, that do speak your mind in that way, to keep doing that in the spaces that they don't allow you to. As long as you're not being hateful or hurtful to somebody, if you're just speaking your mind, you should be allowed to do that. And if you're in a space like Twitter or YouTube, do it anyways.
Yeah.
You got to be in that battlefield.
Mm-hmm. I know in recent months, Dave left the Louder Crowder. You have as well. There was a lot of really negative press surrounding that whole split and the situation. Is there anything positive that came out of that that you can share? I mean, I don't want to relitigate old wounds and things like that. And obviously, Steven gave you a big break early on. But what's the upside there? Because I think for a lot of right-leaning audience members, they were frustrated by that and saddened to see the acrimony.
Well, I agree. I am frustrated and saddened about it. I actually left about a year and a half ago at the beginning of 2020. And that was all, amicable. We just parted ways because I was my heart wasn't in it anymore to be talking about news politics every day, and I didn't want to bring the team down with my energy. I was like, I want you guys to succeed, and I still do. I want them to succeed, and I think they are. So I just parted that way, and yeah, we had a good deal, and I was on the show a few more times and stuff like that. But then Dave left for his reasons, and then we had to. Well, I guess they had canceled some of my shows that I was supposed to come on, so I think the doors closed on their end. But I wish them the best. I hope they do great. And
gotcha.
A lot of people want to do the whole like I'm in this camp or I'm in that camp.
Right.
Like there's no camps, man. I want everybody to succeed.
Gotcha. I think there are more and more right-leaning platforms like the Daily Wire who are for lack of a better phrase, going Hollywood. They're making movies there, good for them. Blaze TV seems like they've got a bigger target on comedy. The movie Reopening, which I thought was just brilliant and wonderful. I hope people check it out. And obviously, in Normal World, Chad Prather's been there a while. Can you talk a little bit about it? I don't know how, immersed you are in Blaze TV land, but just kind of curious about the approach going on there, because I think it's exactly on target. And I think more people should be doing it, even if you're not right of center. But any thoughts there to wrap things up?
Yeah. So from the limited stuff that I know about what their vision is that they are definitely trying to push in that direction. They've purchased another show from a couple of guys that produced a sitcom on Roku, I believe. No, it was Amazon. And they're not producing it there anymore. And they're writing a new show for the Blaze. So they're definitely pushing in that direction, which is awesome, which I love, because it's not just sitting back and going, I want somebody else to make the content that I want to watch. It's them going, okay, well, let's make that content. Yeah.
Easier said than done, right? But it's necessary.
It's difficult. But I think they're getting the right people together to do that. And that's very, very awesome to be a part of that movement.
Yeah, well, obviously, Normal World is a key part of that movement for sure. Quarter-Black Garrett, thank you so much for joining the Hollywood in Total podcast. I hope everyone will check out Normal World, a very funny and timely show /podcast/ satirical series. It's got a lot of different elements. It's almost emerging on the fly, like you mentioned, which I think is fun to watch as a fan, that's for sure. You can see it at Blaze TV or, of course, your favorite podcast platform. And also check out Garrett at Friday Night Tights, another great platform. It's such a monolith. It's such a machine. I love the voices that go on that show. I was fortunate enough to go in there once, and I was I didn't think I had the geek credentials to really kind of stand out. But
you were great.
I love what Gary does, and it's just an amazing part of the new landscape. It's new, it's exciting, it's different, it's fresh, it's original, it's bold, and I think all those qualities apply to you as well. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the success in the world with the new show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, as you probably know, I'm a film critic, I'm a TV critic, I'm an entertainment reporter, but I can't watch everything. There's so much content out there now, and it's gotten worse. And I don't mean worse in a bad way, but the flood of content has gotten more profound in the last few years. So I've missed some pop culture milestones along the way. And I have to say, if this writer's strike and actor strike keeps going, maybe we'll all get a chance to catch up, but I digress. It took me a while to watch every episode of Breaking Bad, for example, and that was after the show had finished its run at AMC. I missed it. I caught up with it on Netflix like a lot of people did, but I didn't watch it week by week in its prime when it was airing, when the whole country was just mesmerized by it. I missed that moment. I've also never seen Lost. I was curious about it. I wanted to jump in, but the show was already a season or two old, and I just felt like I missed it. I missed the moment. I'll catch up with it someday, but today, no. And I've actually never gone back and watched it from start to finish, in part because I heard the ending was a bit of a letdown, and it makes me less interested in seeing the whole thing. But I will someday. I'll definitely catch up. But I think this is my craziest confession when it comes to shows and TV projects that I've missed. I've never seen The Office, really. The NBC Office, I mean. I think I've seen an episode or two, but nothing more than that. And I've never had the impulse to go back and watch it all. Well, that impulse hit me recently. I signed up for Peacock. It's a good platform. They've got a lot of interesting options, but they've got the whole series, and I've been watching it. I mean, I don't even think I could say binge watching, and I'm super binge watching it right now. And yeah, I'm late to the party, 10 years late. The show went off the air in 2013, but there's actually a lot to talk about today when it comes to The Office. Most of it involves Steve Carell, a.k.a. Michael Scott, the greatest boss of all time. Now, Carell has said in recent years, and not with any overt sense of sadness, unless I'm missing the nuance, that you couldn't make a show with a Michael Scott character today. Of course, he's the boss of the series. He's the guy who wants to be everyone's best friends. He's as absolutely clueless and ignorant as possible. I think if you looked at him from a clinical point of view, he's probably on the spectrum. But, he's too politically incorrect and as far from woke as possible to be made into a character today. Yeah, that's right. Carell is right. That's a great description of the character, and that's why the show is so funny. But it actually gets a little worse when you look back on it, and from the people who were the big players behind the scenes of The Office. I'm talking about Mindy Kaling. Now, she had a small role in the show. She was charming. She was effective. She was a good part of the ensemble. She also wrote and co-produced a lot of those early episodes. So she wasn't just a bit player. She really was part of the office machinery. And in recent times, she said she isn't sure she'd let her children watch the show due to that provocative, troubling nature. Now, her kids are very young. But when someone pressed her about the issue, like, maybe someday you'll let the kids watch it, her answer was maybe never. Imagine that. Imagine not being proud of something you've done that is beloved by millions of people. But here's more of what she said. That show is so inappropriate now. We talk about the writers who I'm still in touch with now. We always talk about how so much of that show we probably couldn't make now. I mean, I understand what she's saying, and she's not wrong, but it's heartbreaking. It also shows how far she's declined as an artist, that she's not outraged by that, and she won't even show her kids the show that she worked so hard on, that's so funny, that's so groundbreaking, that's so good. It's sad. Well, I'm still allowed to say how great The Office is, and I'm so glad not only that I'm watching it, but I'm doing so with my 14-year-old son by my side. And we are laughing way too much to be offended by anything. Sorry, Mindy. Well, that's it for the show. Thank you again to Radio America for having me as part of their very cool podcast lineup. And of course, while I have your ear before you go, I hope you'll drop by HollywoodInToto.com. Plug alert, plug alert. It's updated 7 days a week. Even when I'm on vacation, I'm updating it. And it gives you the skinny on what's woke, what's not, and of course, most of all, what's worth your hard-earned dollar. See you next time.